We will now have a Dharma talk given by Reverend Elaine Donlin.
The entire cosmos is a cooperative. The sun, the moon, the stars live together as a cooperative. The same is true for humans and animals, trees, and the earth. When we realize that the world is a mutual, interdependent, cooperative enterprise, we can build a noble environment. If our lives are not based on this truth, then we shall perish. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namandots, namandots, namandots. Good morning. It is wonderful to be here this morning, back in the Hondo, live streaming the services from the Hondo, which we're going to be doing from now on. Even when we come back in person, we will still live stream for those who are not here in San Francisco. For me, it's really wonderful to be back in the Hondo because I consider this place a sacred place. I consider it my spiritual home. The quote I just read was from a well-known and influential Thai Buddhist monk and philosopher of the 20th century, Buddhadasa Bhikkhu. And he speaks of a noble environment in a much wider perspective than I just did in referring to our spiritual home here at BCSF. As we approach our 80th week of this temple's closure due to the pandemic, I'm reflecting on what this idea of a sacred place is and what a noble environment really looks like. Without a doubt, the effects of this global pandemic has peeled away much more than our global interdependence as the pandemic races around the world. COVID-19 is disrupting lives and livelihoods around the world. The most important consequence are the public health crisis and the associated economic and humanitarian disasters, which have historic impacts on human beings. And here in the US, it is peeled away and lifted up environmental, economic, and socio-political inequalities that have been compounded for generations. COVID-19 is not an equal opportunity virus. Its presence has shined a blistering spotlight on America's pandemic of inequality. And everything we know so far says that its burden falls disproportionately on low-income communities and communities of color. We're seeing the workings of cause and effect. Yet, additionally, after widespread sheltering and other restrictions, the impact of human interactions on our planet became quantifiably clear. Bay Area pollution levels continuously declined after March 17, 2020, when most counties initiated stay-at-home orders. And we saw lower carbon emissions on a global level as well. Sheltering and mobility statistics from different areas of the world are now a source of information that can be used to understand causality with respect to the planet's responses. Animals also seem to have reaped some rewards during this time of human sheltering in place, as they wandered into areas they typically avoided because of activity or noise. There is an uptick of coyote sightings here in San Francisco on social media. Yosemite National Park rangers have said that bears were coming out a lot more frequently. Cause and effect. While it's really promising to read about the environmental benefits, it's important to recognize that these gains are only temporary unless specific actions are taken. But still, this period of time has provided insights that could help leaders at all levels map out a cleaner, safer future for us all. I am often reflecting on one of the Buddha's iconic images. It's the Buddha sitting with one palm upright in his lap while the other hand touches the earth. This, it is said, occurred because Mara, representing the forces of greed, anger, and ignorance, demanded that Siddhartha produce a witness to confirm his spiritual awakening. Siddhartha, remaining calm to Mara's provocations, gently reached out his hand and touched the earth. And the earth responded, "I am your witness." Mara then quickly vanished, and Siddhartha finally saw the answer to the question of suffering that he had been seeking for so many years. It was at that moment he realized enlightenment. It is written that the morning star appeared in the sky and Siddhartha became a Buddha, the awakened one. It is this moment of supreme enlightenment that is the central experience from which the whole of the Buddhist tradition unfolds. A mudra is a gesture or a pose with symbolic meaning. So the gesture of touching the earth, which is also called the earth witness mudra, represents steadfastness. Because of Siddhartha's steadfastness in remaining immovable to Mara's taunting and tempting. On one hand faces the sky in his lap in a meditative posture, while the other hand is outstretched, touching the earth. And so taking in the latest news and seeing all the suffering in Louisiana from Hurricane Ida and the deadly flooding that has taken place in New Jersey and New York, adding to increasing climate challenges throughout the world, I've asked myself, has Mara taken on a new form? Reflecting on the destruction and suffering, I have to say perhaps. Maybe Mara, representing our ignorance, our aversion, our greed, has taken the form of our present ecological crisis. This earth has observed so much more than the Buddha's awakening. For the last 3 billion years, the earth has been witness to the evolution of over 5 billion species, 99% of which are now extinct, from single-cell organisms to the amazing complexity of plant life and animal life that we know today. And we're a part of this evolution. Intellectually, we know that existence of all things on earth is interdependent. Our teachings have been saying this for 2,700 years. It's been saying that we're not separate from this earth, nor from nature, nor from other beings, and that it is supremely ignorant of us to separate ourselves from any of it, as we depend on this earth. We depend on this earth for fresh air to breathe, for clean water to drink. We depend on other life forms to live. Our existence depends on these things just as these things depend on our existence, all because of our interdependent nature. Reverend Yasuo Izumi from the Buddhist Temple of Southern Alberta, Canada, once said, quote, "We individually and collectively create our own environment. We must try to live harmoniously and not selfishly. We must try to live with respect and caring for the environment, and with a mindfulness that all living things are precious. We must treat our environment with care and not be wasteful. Even a sheet of paper or a piece of cloth must be received with gratitude." I love and appreciate that perspective. Back at the time of the historical Buddha, Siddhartha had his monks dressed in robes made from rags. At that time, the Buddha initially instructed his monks to gather cloth material from what he called pure cloth. And by pure cloth, the Buddha was talking about cloth made from that which appealed to no one else, right? So there was no attachment to it. These were materials that were considered rags and not of any use. For example, the recommended cloth included torn cloth, cloth burned by fire, and cloth used as shrouds, mostly for dead bodies. As a result, the Buddhist monks would search for cloth thrown away in garbage dumps, and then they'd cut out the parts that they couldn't use. Then they'd wash the cloths and sew them into one larger cloth. At this stage, they would dye the cloth with plant matter, including roots, barks, and leaves. But the main ingredient used for the dye was the spice turmeric, which is what gave the robes an orange-yellow color. And it was only later that the Buddha allowed his monks to receive cloth donated from local villagers. So I think ecology, which is the study of the relationship between living organisms, including humans, and their physical environment, is actually interwoven into the fabric of the Buddhist teachings. Mindful ecology implies a humility, right, of not needing the latest, the greatest, the newest, or the finest. If we base our life and conduct on the truth of interdependence and cooperation, we transcend that notion that Buddhist practice takes place only in a temple or a Dharma center. Instead, we come to realize the importance of integrating the practice of interdependence mindfully into our everyday life. In the Amida Sutra, the Pure Land is described in detail as the glorious manifestations of a realized Buddha land of perfect bliss. Shinran called it the land of peace and the land of all-knowing wisdom. As Reverend Inagaki explained, it is a transcendent reality explained in terms of cause and effect in the world of experience. Cause and effect. Today's Shotsuki Hoyo service is also a reminder of cause and effect and interdependence, and also impermanence. For those of you here for this September Shotsuki Hoyo monthly memorial, you intimately know impermanence. And by virtue of coming together today in honor of your loved ones, you also know interdependence. The teaching tells us that attempting to live in the past only brings sadness and frustration, while attempting to live in the future keeps us fearful and anxious with uncertainty. The Nembutsu is right here, this moment, no calculation. Just a spontaneous affirmation of gratitude for our profound interdependence and precious impermanence. This morning, I'm thinking of Shinran's words, "If I am behind, I will be guided by others. If I go first, I will guide others." So we come together today to remember and honor our guides who have preceded us, who brought us together to hear the Dharma and to say the Nembutsu. Their kindness reaffirms the working of the compassionate vow. I'd like to close with a writing from Shinran Shonin that's found in the Notes on the Essentials of Faith Alone. Buddha nature is none other than Tathagata. This Tathagata pervades the countless worlds. It fills the hearts and minds of the ocean of all beings. Thus, plant, tree, and land attain Buddhahood. Since it is with this heart and mind of all sentient beings that they entrust themselves to the vow of the Dharma body of compassionate means, this Shinjin is none other than Buddha nature. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namandots. 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 Please stay healthy and connected. Thank you.
Thank you, Sensei.